I'm Mike Costello, and I'm with the Reverend Iris Freelander, and we'd like to take the next few minutes to share with you some ideas and thoughts about prayer and meditation. In our philosophy, in New Thought metaphysical philosophy, prayer and meditation are a fundamental part of our religious belief. And in today's environment, where we seek to center ourselves, to deal with stress, to deal with physical ailments and illnesses, meditation and prayer are so valuable a tool that we'd like to share this time with you in sharing some ideas and concepts about meditation. Reverend Freelander teaches meditation and has a meditation group, and so why don't we start by talking about the value of meditation?
Wonderful. There's nothing I like better than talking about meditation because I think it helps us in every aspect of being. And as you know, I've been meditating for 50 years. They say a woman who'd tell her age would tell anything, so I'm telling my age somewhat. And I've been teaching it for 30 years, and I've seen lives change so greatly through meditation. And it doesn't mean churchianity, it means just your communion with God, the whole. And it's such a wonderful thing that we can go home to God at any moment. And that's what we're doing in meditation and listening. And as you know, and you say prayer is talking to God and meditation is listening. And so many people don't take time to listen. They just implore God for this and that and the other thing, and always imploring. Well, it's okay to do that, but only briefly. And we need to have our prayers be brief and our listening times be longer.
I think in the West, and certainly people who come from traditional Christian backgrounds, are very aware of prayer.
Yeah.
and how to pray. And of course, a lot of churches and religious groups spend a lot of time telling people how to pray. And we have groups that use repetitious prayer. We have groups that use prayers of intercession and prayers of asking and all kinds and manner of prayer. But if we actually believe, as we do, that God knows all that there is to know, then the need is known even before we speak it. And so as we pray, the value of prayer does center us and allows us to come together and have a common thought for our needs, the needs of others, for a want or desire. But meditation is that distinctive avenue of listening to God and quieting ourselves. And what we see so often is people from Eastern faiths and religious traditions understand meditation far better than they understand prayer. Or their prayer life is repetition, which is much as we know in the Catholic faith, where repetitious prayer is used extensively. But the value of meditation and that ability of centering ourselves in the presence of God, opening ourselves to the messages and to the guidance and the direction and the inflowing of the power of God, and simply being and listening is very difficult for us in the West.
Because we're so attuned to just talking and asking. And as you said, God does know what we want every moment of the time, but God gave mankind, earthlings, free will. And so because of our free will, those from the inner would never impose anything on us that against our free will. So we need to ask, and we need to pray, and we need to ask, but we need to just do it briefly. We need to say it so that it's out on the ethers, or think it, and to ask for the help, and then it's always forthcoming. And whatsoever you shall ask in prayer, believing, you shall receive, is so very true. But we don't need the repetition, and we don't need to, like someone said, worry God to death, of giving him over and over what we need and want and think we must have. And whatever we, as you teach so beautifully, words and thoughts have molding power, so let us careful be, knowing that we're building our eternity. And we indeed are. We're building not only today, but for eternity, because whatever we are today is building toward what we will be tomorrow.
And that aspect of repetitious prayer so often can become, and of course in the Eastern tradition, is used as a centering force. And so there is value to that. But in meditation, we don't have either the communication going to and from, and we don't have the repetitiveness. We very seldom announce in this program activities at our church, because the purpose of this program is not to draw attention to the church as much as it is to draw attention to the philosophy of metaphysics and New Thought. But on Wednesday evenings, you do have a meditation group that meets every Wednesday at 7 o'clock at the church for 2 hours. And maybe it would be helpful to talk about what that group does and how they go through the process of meditation, keeping in mind that one form of meditation works or is used by one group, and there are other variations. And so we're not talking about the only type of meditation, but maybe we could do a little sharing about how the meditation group works at the church.
Good. Well, we do try, as you know, different modalities of meditation, because sometimes we're prompted to just have a long silent meditation, and other times a visually guided meditation. And as you know, the first hour we have a lesson, discussion, questions and answers, and that gets everyone relaxed and feeling secure within themselves. And then the second hour is a brief prayer, and then a long meditation, and then a healing time. And we've had the phenomenal healing results. That's so wonderful. And the reason we've had those phenomenal healing results is because everyone is blending their energies and extending their energies toward the healing aspect. And it's just been wonderful. And it's because we've centered ourselves in the meditation time. And if we don't have new people there on Wednesday evening, we have a longer silent meditation, because when people are new at meditating, then they like the visually guided better. So we're just prompted from Spirit on which to do and how to do it. And we try different modalities because it's good for people to have, not just do the same thing, because to be static is to be stagnant, to be static. And so then when we try the different ones, some people will try them first one and then another and then another, and others will stay with one and then just try one occasionally, a new modality of it. But one thing we can do is balance our chakras. We always balance the chakras and the sevenfold bodies. And we do that very quickly in the very beginning of the meditation time. And then we have a guided, as I said, a guided meditation according to how it seems that the people need it and want it. And sometimes the energy is so potent that we're just prompted as the leader to not have any guided meditation at all, and to just go right into the silent meditation. And we always remind everyone that they may ask any questions they like silently during their meditation, and they will hear the answers, and that they will remember their answers. I prompt them to remember what their answers are. And many people get phenomenal help from that time. And it's a wonderful practice for them, so that when they meditate at home, they're more secure and more guided in their own right. And another thing I always remind them is they will have they'll have their very most wonderful, enlightening experiences when they're alone, but they get to that point better when they have indulged in group meditation. And that's the way it works.
Mm-hmm. And the value of the collective meditation and the collective consciousness and awareness does create a power or a force. And we see that so often in traditional prayer groups. We see it especially in the kind of spontaneous healing that so many people, again, in the West, in traditional religions, are accustomed to. When thousands of people come together to pray for healing, or thousands of people come to pray for a purpose, then that consciousness and that awareness combined with the power of God creates a manifestation that has to have an outpouring. And the healing aspect is very, very interesting and very important, because, as you say, from this meditation, your group, or the group at the church that you lead, is having so many wonderful healings and tremendous healings.
Yes, wonderful healings. There was one man whose doctor told him he had to have heart valve surgery, and he asked for 6 weeks of time to make up his mind, and he came to the church for the healing every Wednesday night. And then on the 5th week, he went back for tests, and they found he did not need the surgery at all. And they couldn't imagine that all his vital signs were normal, his blood pressure and so forth. And there was another lady who had a diverticulitis so bad that she was totally miserable. So she called and asked us that said she wouldn't be there, but she would be meditating with us. And I said, well, about 8:20 then is when we will be concentrating on you. And her pain stopped at that time. She said, I didn't tell her at 8:20. I just said, well, we'll be working with you. So then she told me later that at 8:20 the pain stopped, and she wasn't feeling any more pain, and didn't feel any more pain after that. And it was her intent. It's the intent that's so important in our spiritual work, as you know. And so it was her intent to join with us in spirit, and we did send the energy out. And I'm fully convinced that the angels of prayer take our prayers where they're most needed, and they take them where we direct them. And so we directed them to that lady, and they went. And she was totally healed. And we've had other wonderful healing too. There's a young man, 16 years old, who had leukemia, and he's had a remission now. And his mother is just so thrilled about the remission, and so are we all. But that's not too unusual, what we're doing in our church, because many churches have done this, and many individuals and groups, non-church oriented for that matter, because it's just the intent and the intensity of purpose that the energy we put into it.
And that has a creative force because
Yeah.
it takes on the nature of God, which is creative and
Right.
restorative and healing.
Right.
Interesting in medicine, what's happening, and of course there are a variety of studies now being done on the power and the influence of prayer on healing. And a number of studies are coming out in the very positive and affirmative way, substantiating the fact that prayer, even undirected prayer,
Yes.
prayer not directed to individual people, but even directed to wings of hospitals or rooms in hospitals, have a positive impact. And there's a wonderful study now being done in the Midwest on the impact of post-operative pain and the pain threshold and the healing process of wounds post-operatively that's being done.
That's exciting.
And the data that is coming out is clear that those for whom there are prayers said and those to whom their prayers directed experience less pain and faster healing. And so that process, and part of it has to do, I'm sure, with, from a spiritual standpoint, with the information that you just shared with us, and that is that the messengers of prayer, or the angelic beings, or the angels, are able to direct and attune this presence into the points of need. And it has an impact. And interestingly, as you found at the church, and we find repeatedly in the ministry of our church and other churches, is that it doesn't always have to do much with the spiritual condition of the person. You know, so often people believe that the meditating for someone, praying for someone, bringing about healing, physical or attitudinal or spiritual healing, really requires belief on the part of the recipient. And we find that the opposite is true, that the power of God and the power of prayer and the power of meditation can transcend and even touch a person that doesn't believe.
Exactly. But that brings up an important point that I've always taught, and I believe you do too, that we don't pray specifically for individuals unless they ask for those specific prayers. We pray for their highest good, and may the angels of prayer take our prayers. And so many people think that's not a good idea because they think if John Jones is an alcoholic, we need to pray for him that he'll stop that alcoholism. Well, to me, that's the wrong way of praying because we're going against his free will. So unless someone asks for specific prayers, then if we pray for their highest good, they get all the benefit of the prayer without our putting our connotation onto it and usurping their free will, because God gave us free will and we have to honor that in others.
And praying for the highest and the best is insurance, if you will, because God's highest and best for everyone is that they be healed, that they be touched. And while we're talking about this, I think it's very important that we touch on the fact that and we are talking principally about meditation and prayer, and now we've kind of shifted into meditation and prayer for healing. But if there is not a healing, when there is prayer for a healing, if there's not a manifestation or the result that we want or we would expect, it has nothing at all to do with the validity and the power and the presence of the prayer and the impact that it has, because we don't understand always what the needs of that person or what the needs of that condition are.
Yes, that's right, and we don't need to because it's often not our prerogative to know. All we need to know is send with love God's healing energy. And as I tell the group on Wednesday evening, most Wednesday evenings, that realize that you are co-creators with God the whole, and we are co-creators with God as we do that healing work. As we do our prayer, meditation, healing work, we are co-creating with God the whole. And it's such a wonderful thing, but it's also a responsibility. And taking away one thing we would never take from another person's free will, and we would never pray against, we would never put our connotation on what needs to be done, because in a sense that goes into a very undesirable aspect of spirituality.
Where we're trying to control and manipulate.
Exactly.
And we're trying to convince God of something.
Yes.
And we understand completely that divine consciousness, that the Creator, the universal presence, knows better than we
Yes.
what the needs are. And so we don't need to, yet so often in prayer life, we find those who use prayer as though we're pleading a case
Yes,
before God. And that's not necessarily what we ought to be doing. Now, for those who choose to do it and feel called to do it, we're certainly not criticizing that, and our role is never to criticize a modality of prayer or meditation. But from our faith tradition and from our perspective, we believe that God is more than capable of deciding and working for the highest and the best good. And so to ask for a specific outcome or a specific thing to take place, or to convince God that any of us or anyone is worthy of something, is a different aspect, and certainly one that we are not participants in.
Yes, but that is, unless the individual for whom we're praying has asked for specific prayer. And then we ask for specific prayer. We ask for the healing in that aspect of being that they ask for. And if they ask that a habit be dropped away from them, then we pray that that may happen, but only if they've asked. And not if a mother asks for her child, if the child is old enough to think for itself. It's unless the person is incapacitated and can't make their own decisions, then we can. And that goes for praying for life and death too. We just, again, if someone is we think they're dying, or the doctors think someone is dying, personally I pray for their highest good unless they have asked me to pray in a different way, because we don't know when it's someone's time to go. And I think that's why some people are held on their deathbed so long, when the family hang around the bed, and the parent and the person doesn't go. Usually it's parents, and the children are just wanting them to not leave, and so it's so easy to just exert our own will, but that's not the right thing to do. Again, release with love. And if we don't release them, then they're not able to do their own spiritual work on the inner, because we hold them too tightly. And there are so many wonderful books about life after death. And in those books, often that is addressed. That they're either grateful to a relative for not holding on to them and holding them back, or they wish they hadn't and they're sorry that they did. And they're sorry they had to go, because it creates a sadness in their psyche as they leave this earth, if the family is being too grief-stricken.
And as you well know, our ministry and a great part of what I teach and talk about has to do with the acceptance of death and the reality and the preparation for death. Because really life is a preparation for death.
Yes.
And I always see, and many in our movement see, the reality that the ultimate healing for all of us is death.
Yes.
And that's a difficult concept for those who have questions about the afterlife or have questions about the continuity of life. And those individuals have to work through that process. But I firmly believe that there is no question about the fact that we're all going to make the transition that we call death.
Indeed.
And it doesn't matter how faithful we are, how good we are, what we do, or who prays for us. And it is the reality that as we make that transition, and as we come to the point in time, and the ones we love and care about, and the ones that we don't love and don't care about come to that point in time, as we release them to that experience, and as they release themselves into that experience, in meditation and in prayer, in unity with God, then the transition is affected much more easily, and life simply goes on.
Exactly, exactly. And they're able to relax on the inner planes and do their work right away. And my friend Susie Ward, whose son died at age 17, told her that in a communique recently, that when he died and they were all so grief-stricken, it took him about 9 months to adjust to his life in nirvana. He's on the plane of nirvana. There are different planes, and that's where he is. And because they were so grief-stricken, it made him wonder if he had made the right decision to go at that time, because that was his pre-planned. He had made that plan before he came in to go out at that time, and to do specific work on the inner planes. And so, and others who have died and come back and given messages to those on earth have said the same thing, that it's harder for them to adjust if the family didn't adjust, as you said, to releasing them right away. And certainly if we love someone, we hate to say goodbye. But it's just another goodbye, and it's ever so brief when we look at the eternity.
And so much a part of the natural process of life. In prayer and meditation, and before time gets away from us, I think we should touch upon the value of meditation in dealing with stress and change in our lives.
That is so important.
Today, everyone is faced with
Yes.
difficulties, and we've talked so often about the fact that time is speeded up and that we have so many more demands upon us, and people are looking for all kinds of ways to cope and deal with the stress of life. And certainly, we see a lot of negative influences, such as drugs and medications and tranquilizers and shopping and
Yes.
sex and gambling and just a whole myriad of ways that we cope with stress. And isn't meditation, if we could move our life from our prayer life to integrate meditation as a part of our daily life and use it as a method of dealing with stress, isn't there a great benefit?
Exactly, exactly. And I formed a plan for working with businesses and did a few workshops with those businesses to help alleviate stress in the workplace. And a lot of other people have done that far more fully than I ever did it, and proved the value of it. And it's so important that we just take the time. And the deep breathing is one of the more important aspects of it. I think that's something everyone should know, that if they practice deep breathing, it creates the relaxation of the physical body so that the higher bodies can take over and be and exert themselves. And then we live from our higher consciousness. And when we're living from our higher consciousness, then we're far more happy, we're guilt-free, we're fear-free, and so forth. So that's what meditation does. It relaxes one so that they function from the highest level of being instead of being too grounded.
And also, by using some simple techniques of meditation,
Yeah,
perhaps we're not able to go into a complete
yeah,
meditation or a deep meditation, but simply using deep breathing,
yeah.
using centering techniques
Hmm.
and abilities, we're able to bring ourselves out of the stress of life and into a peaceful place.
Yes, and as you know, the main aspect is first the deep breathing, to just breathe, inhale deeply through the nostrils and hold it, and then exhale slowly through the mouth. And that helps to quiet the body and the mind and to coordinate mind, body, and spirit. And then to have a mantra or a word or a sentence to bring us back to one pointedness. And so it can be anything that anyone wants to use. And it can be still and know, or it could be anything, whatever is relaxing for the person to hear. And it's not difficult. It's just attuning ourselves to God the whole. And there's the holy monad within each person. And if we know that we have that connection with God the whole, I think it's more easy then to connect with God in meditation and in prayer, because it's just like God is the electric circuit throughout the house, and we're each the light bulbs in the house. And so then, and when one light bulb burns out or is removed, it doesn't diminish the energy of God. And that's a poor analogy, but that is an analogy of it. And so we are attuned to God the whole as we go into our meditation. And as you said a moment ago, just one moment makes a difference. And at the Edgar Cayce Foundation in Virginia Beach, they found that 30 seconds of meditation changed the endorphin level in the human body, which says a verification of what we're just saying.
And that connection of mind, body, and the ability that we have to draw upon this resource of meditation to deal with stress
Yeah,
and to deal with illness
yeah.
and to deal with alienation and to deal with a myriad of problems.
Yes, because stress is just creating tension in our bodies. Stress creates the tension, and then it makes our mind not function as well, and so forth. But when we meditate and go into a meditative state, then it happens that we're attuned to God. And what happens when we're attuned to God? We're relaxed, and our mind is just totally freed.
And the stress then, and of course there is negative stress and there's positive
Yes.
stress. And of course, the kind of stress that people have before a sports event or before giving a talk or a performance or before uh, uh, an appearance of some kind is a very positive kind
Yes.
of stress. And so if we can build upon our ability to have positive stresses and to take the negative stress of our life and neutralize it, then we become stronger persons.
Yes, and that's what we must do, and it's our own work that does it. But if we attune ourselves to the inner, then we receive that inner help, and so which is so wonderful and so invaluable. And it's just so wonderful that we have the capacity to do that, And it's so sad that we don't exercise that capacity more and more often. Like if we just meditate for a few moments, the first thing in the morning, and before we go to bed at night, have our retrospection and brief meditation, and then have a meditation throughout the day. I call them mini meditations, so that we just attune ourselves, and as you said, to center ourselves. Then it makes a difference in our entire day, and we're not as tired at the end of the day. We think more clearly, and we're more creative, and it changes our lives so immeasurably.
And then beyond that, to get involved in a meditation group
Yes.
that allows us to share with others in the meditative experience and to create a longer period of meditation.
That's right. And we need this group energy. More and more people are saying that join together with a group. And as so many people are channeling today and getting wonderful information from the inner planes, and they're all saying it's so important that we get together in groups. And I know when I started the group meetings in my home 30 years ago, it's because Arthur Ford had gone throughout the country, and he advocated that we get together in groups. And that's what we're doing today, whether it's in churches or homes.
Mm-hmm. And that gathering of a group creates a collective energy. It allows us to share with others, to fellowship with others, and to join in one vibration in one group. Reverend Freelander and I have been sharing with you some concepts and ideas in meditation and prayer, and we'd like to invite you or remind you that at the end of this program you'll see the address of our church, and Reverend Freelander would be happy to greet you on Wednesday evening if you'd care to join in the meditation group at 7 o'clock. And we hope you found this information useful, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Rights every wrong, dynamic power helps me be strong, confident living comforts my heart, from such a blessing I can't depart. Confident living helps me expand visions of value, the kingdom at hand. Confident living, talent to win, gift of the Spirit moves from within.